We can apply science to things all around us, and this is actually the same approach that I used to write this book in collaboration with SAP, the PSLE revision papers. So you'll find some of these questions inside the book where you're presented with scenarios that you see in everyday life, but maybe you haven't thought about the science behind it. And of course, through the book and through the answer key, right, I will show you how to exactly score marks for these kind of questions. So really, any student that picks up this book and practices these questions should be able to tackle both easy and difficult questions in the PSLE exam.
Hi, I'm Javier. I'm the host for today, and I have here with me today Mr. Nelson Tng, the founder of Science Learning and the author of Conquer Science. So Nelson, please tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Javier. So for me, I've written this book as for PSLE students. Myself, I run a service called Science Learning, where I give tuition to primary school students, lower secondary students, and also for those with Science Olympiad needs.
Nelson, why do you think it's important for students to master science, and how can it be applicable to our daily life?
Yeah, great question, Javier. So beyond the marks that we score for the science exam, of course, when we know how things work in this world, we can leverage on it, right, to enhance and give more value to our life, therefore improving the quality of our life.
Can you share more about your teaching philosophy, and how do you think you can make science more interesting and make it come alive to the students?
Yeah, personally, actually, I don't just see science as a subject. I see it as a way of life. We can apply science to things all around us. So I actually think about things on a daily basis about how they work, and I want to imbue that same interest in all the students that I teach.
In your opinion, do you think that it is important for students to practice simulated examination papers, and how does it help them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in schools, normally when students go through lessons, they're learning in a topical format. And when you're doing worksheets, actually there's no pressure of examination, like for example, in terms of time limit. So when you practice examination papers within a certain time frame, you are actually simulating that exam setting, and through that you are preparing for a more realistic scenario here when you finally sit for your WAs and your EYE papers. And also, of course, in my own service of Science Learning, I have come up with my own self-made papers that are similar to what I have in my new book as well.
What are the challenges that the students face when preparing for their science exams, and how does practice simulated exam papers help them overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so actually a lot of times when we are in school, we are doing topical type of worksheets where the topics are actually tested in silo. But when it comes to exam scenario, actually a lot of times the topics are blended in with each other. So kids very often, and parents as well, don't see the interlink between topics. And due to the complexity of such questions, when students lack practice, they end up not doing very well. So for myself, beyond this book, under my service SGL, I, on a one-to-one basis, craft specific questions to target students' weaknesses.
Can you share about the approach that you use in helping students to prepare for their science exams?
Yeah, sure. So on the surface, the first thing that I normally do is to teach through notes, where I will focus on keywords and common mistakes and misconceptions that students might have. Beyond that, of course, I will teach them how to tackle MCQ and open-ended questions, okay? And this is actually the same approach that I used to write this book in collaboration with SAP, the PSLE revision papers, where we have a scale from easy to difficult questions, because that is a realistic representation of what we have in the exams. Beyond that, under my own service of Science Learning, I also do sell and provide video packages for self-study, which include the teaching videos, worksheets, and answer keys.
Yeah, so let's talk more about the writing process behind this book. Curious to know, why did you decide to write this book?
Yeah, so actually myself being in MOE for many years, I've seen a lot of past year papers from different schools. While the questions are good, I don't find many original and unorthodox questions. And this is something that's been trending in PSLE in recent years. So students particularly have problem applying the concepts that they already know to unfamiliar situations. So this is one of my key motivators for this book, to include such questions so that students know how to tackle them.
Nelson, can you share some of the challenges that you have faced while writing this book?
Oh yeah, great question. So I didn't just want to write a book that is similar to so many out there already. One thing that I had to ask myself when I was writing the book was, how could I apply the science concepts within PSLE to everyday life? So you'll find some of these questions inside the book where you're presented with scenarios that you see in everyday life, but maybe you haven't thought about the science behind it. And of course, through the book and through the answer key, right, I will show you how to exactly score marks for these kind of questions.
Nelson, as the author of Conquer Science PSLE, can you tell us what are the unique features of this book compared to the others out there in the market?
Yeah, so I didn't just want to write a book that's similar to everything out there. So for me, based on my analysis of PSLE and also my experience with science kind learning, I've identified questions where students commonly don't do well for. So I present these questions, right, in various different ways. When the diagrams are different, the phrasing is different. So from these different angles, when students purchase this book and they really work through it and they understand it from the point of the answer key, how they can write to score marks, I really believe that they'll benefit when they sit for their PSLE exams.
What are some of the skills that students can acquire through using this book?
Right, so generally the skills that I expected of PSLE students, that's my focus for this book. So it includes things like data analysis, generating possibilities, and observational skills. So really any student that picks up this book and practices these questions should be able to tackle both easy and difficult questions in the PSLE exams.
Based on your experience, what are some of the concepts that students struggle with and how is this addressed in your book?
Yeah, certainly there are very tricky things like forces, heat, a lot of the physics topics. Students particularly find difficulty in answering. But in particular, when they are placed in a very unorthodox setting, perhaps the diagram is something unfamiliar or the phrasing of the question that is something unfamiliar. So this is something that I endeavor to actually help students with in this book by providing more of that sort of questions. And through the answer keys, where I have written detailed answers with the relevant keywords, I believe that students doing this book, when they pick up on those keywords and key phrases and put them in their own answers, they'll be able to do well for their exam.
Can you share some tips on how students can use this book effectively?
Yeah, so this book's actually written for everyone in mind, but I do acknowledge that students start off from different ability levels. For our higher ability learners, those who are faster, what they can do is they can take this book and practice the questions as if they were doing the exam itself. Then from there, maybe they or together with their parents would check through the answers and see whether there are any gaps in their answers that they can plug in so that they can do better for their exams. Whereas for lower ability students, I do acknowledge that some of the questions in this book may be a little bit too difficult for you, but that's how the PSLE is structured. So such students can actually look at the answer key, learn the keywords and phrases required, and then use that for their exams. Speaking of which, under my service of Science Kind Learning, I also provide crash course videos where I do show how to place the correct keywords and phrases in the form of a sentence in order to score marks. I also, of course, do this for my regular science classes.
We are coming to the end of the video, so before we part off, Nelson, do you have any advice for students who want to do well in their exams?
Yeah, so definitely, as you are practicing this book, try to use the time limit because you want to replicate an actual exam situation. On the day of the exam itself, make sure that you buffer enough time for both section A and section B, and when you do have excess time, always check through your answers. So for those of you that are interested to purchase this book, you can go to any popular store or you can go onto the website sapgrp.com to purchase it online. For those of you that are keen on my service, Science Kind Learning, you can look out for me on my website bit.ly/sglearning, or feel free to contact me on my WhatsApp number 88242524, where I provide services for science tuition from P3 to P6, Sec 1 to Sec 2, and also for primary Science Olympiad. Looking forward to seeing everyone there.
So that's all we have for today, and goodbye everybody.
Yeah, see you guys. Bye bye.